You know, son, you're not a kid anymore.
Oh, no, I go to
shows.
that. I already know all this stuff.
Well, they don't teach you about everything
At shows.
Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants? So just listen. When boys and girls get a little older, they start getting
interested in punk and hardcore subgenres. Starter kit.
All right, Jeremy. This is a daunting task because anyone that is into Japanese hardcore also is someone that is like, you don't know shit, you're a poser. And so, am I right?
Yeah. And you know, that really kept me away from the genre for a long time. It's very, I mean, I hate to use the phrase, but it's very gatekeepy. It's very like, you know, if you know, you know, but we're not going to ever like invite you in and tell you. So you figure it out. You've been set adrift in the sea and you have to find what's good and what's not.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I like about it is like all of like the tentpole bands, they pretty much all kick ass. And it's like,
absolutely.
I haven't really bothered to learn any history about anything except like, I like these bands, they rip, and that's a wrap. And that's kind of like the same approach I used when I got like way into dub reggae at some point, like a few years ago. And then, and in more recent years, getting into a brand of music called Chicha. Oh, hey, Reggie, you love that Chicha shit, huh? You know? But, yeah, it's just, sometimes it's so fun to just like enjoy music for what it is and try to like keep all like the gatekeeping and the history and the bullshit out of it, you know? Because so much of like punk and hardcore is like splattered with bullshit, right? He did this, They did this, and so like you can't like them for some reason or whatever. And sometimes it's pretty radical to just like tunes for what they are. But I do want to know more. And everyone, you can go to 185milessouth.com, click that playlist link at the top of the page. And Jeremy made a little starter kit playlist here of some of the best stuff that's available on Spotify. So it might not be everything, but he'll get into it. And yeah, Jeremy, hit us to Japanese hardcore.
Yeah, sure. So like, you know, I'll kind of like dive into like how I kind of got into it. Like at first I was really turned off because like the first song I ever heard was like the GISM, you know, Endless Blockades for the Pussyfooter song on the old Peace Comp that came out like a gazillion years ago, like in the 80s. And I heard that song and it was kind of silly. I mean, I love it now, but at the time I just like, you know, I was knee deep in American hardcore and Youth Crew and, you know, like all the old Discord and Touch and Go stuff. And like I heard like a guy basically making cat sounds and silly voices over like, you know, discharge, you know, very, very much dischargey kind of hardcore. And I was like, yeah, this is silly. Why would I dive into this? And I held on to that for years and years and years. My friend's band, they did this band called They Live. Some of the guys from No Reason did a band that I was in, did a band called They Live, which is like a power violence band. And on their first 7-inch, on 625, they covered Misery by Bastard. And I always thought that was a good song. But like, I'd never seen that LP anywhere. Like I never, like, you know, in Buffalo, that's, you know, as far as you can get from Japan as, you know, in New York, you know, as far as it's might as well have been the moon, you know? And then I, you know, heard Bastard and I was like, oh, fuck, this is really good. And luckily someone, you know, reissued the LP in the States. I think Feral Ward did it. And, you know, I thought that was pretty cool. And then I got kind of interested in Deathside. And, but, you know, what really turned me on to the genre, Burning Spirits, as it's called, was Judgment. And unfortunately, that stuff's not streaming. I mean, you can check it out on YouTube and stuff, and you can probably find links or, you know, maybe find the records. But for me, like, you know, the whole Burning Spirits thing is really what, you know, got me to buy into Japanese hardcore, because like the difference between like when you listen to some like bands from other countries or whatever, the music isn't necessarily precise. And that's one of the things about hardcore that is like awesome. Like bands can write awesome songs and maybe not be super adept at their instruments. But when you listen to Burning Spirits hardcore, those guys can fucking play. Like they could play probably anything they wanted to, and they choose to play like the most ripping hardcore that still has this like melodic metal element to it. It's kind of like, if Discharge and Iron Maiden had a fucking jam session or something. It's so powerful and so precise, and yet has a sense of melody to it, like with these awesome killer, like metallic leads. And so, the story of Japanese hardcore, as I know it, really kind of starts with some people call them gaze, some people call them gauze, and the early to mid 80s. Those, their second album, Equalizing Distort, is like still sounds fresh today. And it's so fucking raging. It's insane how effective a lot of the bands are at just, devastating you. Yet giving you that little taste of that, like I said, like that little taste of not necessarily melody, but just a little something in the music that also grabs you besides just the vocals and, the very precise D beat that they do.
Jeremy, that's because there's a musicality, right? Because a lot of these bands are tracing to Poison Idea, right?
Absolutely. That's
a band that has serious chops.
Absolutely. And especially when you get into like the more 90s stuff, like for Death Side, once they kind of get past like Wasted Dream, their first album, and get into like Bet on the Possibility, and then like they're split with Chaos UK, and their two the last two records they did, the Though We'll Never Die and All Is Here Now, 7 inches. You hear those and you're just like, you can pretty much hear like the late 80s Poison Idea in that stuff, especially Feel the Darkness. Like you just feel that. And then as like those guys got on, like if you listen to like Forward, another band, which is some of the guys from Death Side, like that is, especially their early stuff, that is very Poison Idea-y. And Poison Idea, I mean, they fucking rule. Feel the Darkness is an all-time classic for a reason. And it's like, a lot of these bands, it seems like that's the only American influence that really gets in there for them is Poison Idea. Like, when you listen to a lot of other, bands from overseas or whatever, you'll hear, oh, this is their kind of like, they're trying to be, Youth of Today, or they're trying to be Minor Threat, or they're trying to be DRI or whatever. But then you listen to a lot of Japanese bands and it seems like the only real American influence that they let in, and I'm not saying that they don't listen to like Black Flag, Minor Threat, and all those bands, but the only one they let into like their style or whatever is that just that late 80s, early 90s Poison Idea feel.
Right, of the American, because there's lots of like British influence, like the UK.
Tons of British, yeah, UK 82. Yeah, UK 82 is like their foundation, absolutely.
Right.
There's like a story of like Death Side beating up Discharge at some point because they thought that they were like guys pretending to be Discharge and not the actual band.
That rules. I mean, by the time Death Side is around, like, are they wrong?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know what year. I've just read of the tale that some of the Death Side guys they beat up Discharge. They were fighting them until they realized it was the actual band.
Oops.
Another one of my favorite Japanese hardcore stories is the singer of Bastard. Long after Bastard was done, he sung on the third Judgment single, and he was supposed to sing on the fourth single too. But like the night before they were going to record, he got thrown in jail because he beat up a cop. And that's what got him thrown out of the band, because he couldn't keep his commitment to record.
Fuck. Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into this playlist a little bit, and then we can always like dive into these bands a little more. Let's work a little out of order, so we can go kind of sequentially through the years. The oldest band you have on here is the Stalin.
Absolutely. I love the Stalin. So they're a little more prototypical for like a hardcore style. They're more of like a punk band just getting into that hardcore thing. I guess, the phrase you guys would use is more like a maybe a 1.5 band,
Gia.
Yeah, but they're they're starting to kind of play with hardcore a little bit on their album Stop Jap. And on the playlist, I included 2 songs from that, Romanticist, and the song's called Allergy, but it's written in Japanese on their in the liner notes. But I have both those singles as well, and they're just great songs. Like they were one of the earliest bands to do it. The singer was known for being especially wild when they played. There's like a really famous picture of him, like they're playing at like a university in like 1980. And like by the end of the set, he's just completely naked and going off, shocking the audience, of course. But yeah, Stalin are great. They were around for a long time.
Yeah, because they line up the first LP in 81 and then 82 is the one that you chose the songs off of. And this got re-released recently, I could swear. Because I bought a Stalin LP. Maybe I'll have to pull it out because I can't figure out what one it is on here. So it must be a bootleg. But yeah, Ben, what did you think about these songs?
I discovered Stalin. First of all, I'm not even a Japanese hardcore poser. I'm just like a Japanese hardcore ignoramus. But I discovered the Stalin a few years ago when someone said, "This is the beginning." And I'm always curious about the origin stories of anything, even things I don't really care about. I just want to know how things came to be. That's just like, I know some people are like, why would you even care if you don't even like the thing in the first place? But this I really like. I really like this band. And what the curious thing to me is the first single comes out in 1980. So who are they influenced by? This is kind of like the beginning of hardcore for this country. And it's sort of like, it makes me think that that like Japanese hardcore evolved in a similar way as hardcore in other countries, where it starts out kind of mid-tempo and then gradually over the years it gets faster and more metallic and less hooky, because this is definitely more tuneful than some of the later stuff on this playlist. So do you have, it almost reminds me of the Effigies. I can't even put my finger on it, but like, Jeremy, do you have any idea who the Stalin were influenced by?
I know that they were like kind of more from the art side and political side of things. And a good friend of mine who lived in Japan for many years said, like, in Japan, they're like revered in the same way like the Clash are elsewhere. But he doesn't feel like they got their due outside of Japan. I mean, I think they kind of do in the States now. Kind of everybody knows who they are. But I really don't know who their influences are aside from the political and like the art shock value of it. Because, they definitely wore really crazy makeup and stuff like that. And there's lots of videos of them online and stuff, and they appeared in like really early films and stuff. Like they were like the like happening punk band in Japan in the early 80s.
Were there regular 70s style punk bands in Japan in the 70s, or is this also the first punk band from Japan?
No, there was a band that was actually borderline hardcore, whose name completely escapes me now because all of their stuff only exists in live recordings. But there was definitely stuff happening in the 70s.
Okay.
Let me see if I could if I could find their name real quick.
I'd say the Stalin sounds like being influenced by 77 UK, but also influenced by the burgeoning start of, like, for example, we just talked about Army Life thing. So it's like, it is very 1.5 to beat a dead horse, but it's really like starting to be aggressive, but it's still got some definite roots in like 77 style guitar sound.
Absolutely. And not only that, like some of their songs are actually just Ramones and Sex Pistols songs with Japanese lyrics over them.
I love that.
And also their B-side of the, I think it's at the Allergy 7-inch, like their cover of No Fun, the Stooges song. So like, I guess their influence is probably the same stuff that was influencing, that the American and UK punk of the late 70s.
I believe the singer died in 2019, and I'm looking at an article. He died around that time. I'm sorry that I don't know that for a fact, but and I'm reading this article and it says, main influences Sex Pistols, Patti Smith, and Devo.
Yeah,
And the singer
that makes
talks about
sense.
seeing Devo's first concert in Japan, and that lines up because a lot of like the second generation like punk dudes and like first gen hardcore, like a lot of them, their crossover band was Devo, just like this.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So the late 70s, like quote unquote hardcore band, like they played really fast, noisy stuff, were a problematic title. They were called the SS.
Yeah, well, from the SS to the Stalin, so
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
they're all going for it. Okay, the next old thing on here, let me see, let me pull it back up. It is the GISM song that you chose, which you talked about a little bit. And
Yeah,
this is from the Detestation LP, and this also just got re-released too, so everyone could find it again. Plus, it's online.
yeah, it's Relapse reissued it, which is it's a nice reissue. For me, their album is Military Affairs Neurotic, their second album, Man. That's the album that I think is their best, and it's really expensive if you want to find a copy of it, to the tune of $800 for the LP. And there are more recent bootlegs of it, which are also really hard to find. Luckily, I have one. But that record is crazy because like the first Detestation, it's like they're kind of trying to figure it out. Like it's very punk, very rudimentary, and they're just kind of like, trying to figure out what they're doing. But on Man, they sound like Iron Maiden with a black metal singer. It's like crazy. It's like, it's just like this unreal record. And it's such a weird recording. And, it's like super melodic, like Randy Uchida, like the guitar player just like kills it. And, the drummer who played on that record, just passed away like 2 days ago. As a matter of fact, Hiroshima, he just died. So
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Rip GISM.
What do you think about this song, Dan?
It's I can see why when Jeremy first like heard it just feels a bit wacky and also it sounds like you're in the living room with someone doing the vocals while they're playing the stereo in the bedroom. Do you know what I mean? Like the vocals are so much louder.
Yeah, absolutely.
The entire music sounds compressed, like it's a backing track, like almost karaoke. But yeah, it's definitely I can see it having like that crass influence though of like, whereas there's a punk lane to follow, and then there's a way to express yourself that you are doing it outside of what's usually normal, and then that actually becomes more punk. And I can see this being from that lane, being very avant-garde, very taking a moment to be different.
And that's the appeal of this, right, Jeremy, is that like these guys are serious players, but then they're also like they're always coloring outside the lines.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of these bands, for however they're doing it. If they're doing it in like kind of like a more abrasive way, or in kind of like what may seem to us like to be silly, or maybe they're just like playing at like such a high level. Like it's always like just a little left of field. You know what I mean? A little outside that box.
It's so ill. Ben, what did you think about this one?
This is the worst fuzz tone on any guitar on any punk record possibly ever. It's like, and I'm not sure about the talking / jokey sounding vocals. Like, here's where I feel like I'd understand the intent of the song if I understood the lyrics. Like, if the lyrics are jokey, it's like, oh, okay, that's why he's talking and singing in a jokey way. But I don't really understand what he's saying. I know this band from 20 years ago because Jamie from Fields of Fire would play this record and he'd say, oh, look, they have this song called Tear Their Syphilitic Vaginas to Pieces. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Either there is something lost in translation Or these guys are the Japanese version of the Mentors, only on crack.
Endless blockades for the pussyfooter, dude. Nothing lost in translation there. Makes perfect sense to me.
Oh yeah, completely.
Ugh. All right, let's jump into Death Side. Jeremy, you took a song off Wasted Dream and a song off Bet on the Possibility. These are the two LPs, and that is the sequence that they come out. First off, do you like one more than the other?
Oh, it's like, I like the recording on Bet on the Possibilities better, but I like all the songs about the same. I mean, this is a band that is so incredibly consistent that from their first 7-inch to their last 7-inch, every compilation track, like every song is a banger. Like if you go see them, they could pick any of their like 50 or 60 songs and play them, and I would be completely happy. Whereas I can't say that about a lot of bands. Like I want to hear like the 12 tracks and then get off the stage. Whereas like, Death Side, they're such a good band and their songs are so like well crafted. But I probably listen to Bet on the Possibility more just because the recording I think is a little better. And my favorite song off of Wasted Dream, which is Mirror, there's a version on a compilation which is recorded better too. So I usually I think it's like Eyes of the Thrash Gorilla or whatever. I go to that more. But damn, those those LPs smoke. Like they're just ripping from beginning to end. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree with that. But Wasted, like, okay, I think Bet on the Possibility sounds way better.
It's a better recording.
And I think it has the better tracks too. I actually
think so?
think
I don't know.
I think it embodies Wasted Dream, dude. And
I think they're about. I don't know. That's okay. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's what I think. And the thing is, Wasted Dream is like super solid the whole way through. Very similar in the way, like we'll talk about Bastard Wind of Pain, and we talked about Bastard Wind of Pain a lot a few weeks back on a different podcast. But the thing is, the Wind of Pain just sounds so bright and so brutal, and like I just love the way it sounds. Where I don't love the way Wasted Dream sounds. So having just kind of like a monotone ripping record is cool. But like when it's backed with that great recording, like Bet on the Possibility or Wind of Pain, that's when it's like apex, like 9 or 10 out of 10. So
yeah, I like I said, I do listen to Bet on the Possibility more, but some of the songs on Wasted Dream are on compilations are recorded better, and I love those. I just love those songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this song Mirror is absolutely great.
Oh my god, that's top 10 fucking hardcore songs of all time, I think. But
I think this Live and Live is like literally my favorite hardcore riff of all time. Like it's like that's a song. If I'm on a horse riding into battle, that's my song.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the way it cuts out and just does the two notes too. The
yeah. If you do you have the most recent Death Side, the unreleased single that comes with the DVD?
No, definitely not.
Oh, it's the DVD that it comes with has them playing that song. I think it's called Mikasa Park. It's like an outdoor show in like '93. And instead of just letting the riff start the song, they start right with the chorus with the riff. And like, there's like, 200 Japanese hardcore fans going bazonkers. It's like the best. It looks like the most fun show that ever happened anywhere at any given time.
I got to see that. Yeah, I have both LPs, and then I have a bootleg that has like all the other tracks on it. So like
that's a good collection. But yeah, the new 7-inch it's streaming. It's on Spotify. The 4 songs are, but they're just unreleased songs from like 88 or 89. But then it comes with this DVD that has like a bunch of live stuff on it. That is like that show in particular. It's unreal how good they are as a band. And
I'm gonna hit YouTube and try to find it.
I couldn't find. I tried to show it to somebody that didn't have a DVD player, and I couldn't find it anywhere online.
Someone put that shit up on YouTube. What the fuck, Dan? What do you think of these 2 songs?
Really good. I can see why. This is a band that I've never listened to before, so I'm psyched to start to get into this. But I can see why both of you really ride for them because there's such a Maiden-esque two guitars dueling in the most perfect way thing about them. That song Mirror, the guitar playing on that totally gives me like Maiden vibes with obviously with also UK 82 backing it. It's really good. It's super good. I'm excited to listen to a lot more of this.
Ben, what's your take?
Also agree, very good. And I'm hearing something that none of you are hearing in the song Mirror. I'm hearing an NYHC Warzone Youth Crew kind of vibe, because you got the choice of chords in the verses, which are fast, and then you have that the shouting in the choruses, and then they go into a breakdown with a guitar solo like Warzone style, and it's like one click away from the New York style of hardcore that's happening in the same era, because this record comes out in '89. Less so with Live and Live. But it's refreshing to hear, to my ears, a Japanese band that leans more American than British in their sound. But maybe I'm completely off and I'm just hearing things that aren't really there.
No, I think thinking about like Warzone, Don't Forget the Struggle, Don't Forget the Streets is like not a terrible comparison. You know, like maybe if you were going to explain this to someone and you wanted to say a mashup of that, you know, you could just say it sounds like a mix between Don't Forget the Struggle and Feel the Darkness, you know? Like, that's a pretty good mashup to explain what it is. You know, Jeremy, how do you feel about that? Is that fair?
You know, I think that, you know, yeah, you could say that, but you gotta give that more metal. You gotta give that more like, you know, new wave of British heavy metal nod to it too, because it has that gravitas to like some of the riffing and the lead work and stuff like that. Stuff that like, you know, Warzone or even with all the prowess of Poison Idea that they couldn't even get near.
I mean, that's the first thing I pulled from it was the new wave of British heavy metal, specifically the way Maiden do like harmonics, you know, like that's what I got from Mirror immediately.
Yeah, the guitar player of Deathside Chelsea is like revered as a guitar god for a reason. Like, you know, he passed away about 10 years ago, unfortunately. But
I do just think that the Warzone shout is a good one for people that don't have, like, if you have a more narrow, straightforward hardcore palette, because it is a band that on that LP they don't shy away from going a little more melodic than some bands would, like In the Mirror, very melodic. They don't shy away from, if they got to wank around the guitar a little bit, they do that, you know, and they write catchy hardcore, fast hardcore. So it's not that big of a jump from it, even if it's like not the same lane.
Right. Yeah, I would say that's fair. Like to get like a novice like interested, absolutely. But the best thing to get a novice interested would be to listen to the playlist.
Absolutely right. 185milessouth.com. Click that playlist link at the top of the page and check out these songs. It is all about the music. Let's go into Bastard, Wind of Pain. This thing is maybe the most brutal hardcore album ever that doesn't go into like blast beats or scissor beats. Like they're just doing a straight fast beat the whole way through. It's totally punishing. And me and Ben went pretty deep into it a few weeks ago. Check that out on the Revolution Summer episode. But let's get Jeremy's take on this band, and we'll get Daniel's as well.
I mean, this, you know, they have a pretty good EP before this. Although this record, the LP is so short, it is an EP practically. But this LP is like, you know, to my friends, like one of my friends, you know, he's like, you know, I've always wanted to get into Japanese hardcore, but it's so daunting because there's so much of it and all that. And I you know, and I felt the same way for a long time. But, you know, I said, well, if there's one thing that you need to hear, it's the Bastard LP. I mean, because anyone who is a fan of hardcore would hear that. And if they didn't like it, I would highly doubt if they are fans of the genre, because it is unrelenting. It's executed so effectively and flawlessly, and every piece of it fits. It's like fucking building Legos. I mean, it's amazing. it's, you know, it's a record so good I own 2 fucking copies of it. You know what I mean? Like it's unreal. It's unreal.
Right. And Ben, what Jeremy says there is fair, right? Because even though like this isn't your lane, when we listened to it before, you were like, you can respect like that this is like a great sounding hardcore record.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say it's not my lane because it reminded me of Discharge, and I've been a Discharge fan since I was a kid, so it's very familiar sounding, and I dig it.
All right, well, I'll homer it back into the bushes and shoot it to Dan.
This LP it's so awesome to listen to because when it's first starting out, you're like, oh, this is a little samey, you know, track 1 to track 2, track 3, it starts pulling apart. And then as it keeps going and then gets to the end, it's just so different, so amazing, like while still being brutal and amazing all the way through. It's, I really, really like it. And I think the sound on it is just incredible, but the I don't know, the grit of this while still sounding great is very hard to do. There's many bands that, you know, will try for a recording like this. They're not going to get it. You know, this is a time and a place that this happened. And, you know, the very first time I started to listen to this band a few years ago, I thought they were like Eastern European at first. I thought it was like total like Eastern European Discharge worship, and then, you know, someone who had recommended it to me when I spoke back to them, like, oh yeah, where are they from? Like Poland or Hungary? They're like, they're from Japan, you fucking idiot. I'm like, oh, okay. But it's super good, like really good. Like everyone should check this out. This is it's so funny because there's so many great bands presented on this playlist, but they might be wearing the championship belt.
Yeah, just because it's like they're playing. There's no person in this band that like steps out of their lane to like get their shine. Like the whole thing is just a beast. Even the vocals, it's like you're just getting pummeled with like this sound. Like the vocals like merge into the music, and everything is like in this 4/4 lane of brutality. You know, it's like the
Absolutely.
dude's hitting the cymbal on like every downbeat. The riff is like staying right in those lines. And it's like one of those things how, you know, we've talked about like any band that tries to sound like Gorilla Biscuits ends up like eating their dick because like they can't do it. And this is very similar because if anyone else tried to like write songs this like on paper simple, it would just sound lame and boring. But they have like the chops and they stay in their lane, not because they have to, but because they're making like the best hardcore they possibly can. It's so intense and so gnarly.
And
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, but what's crazy about it is that when they start, you know, after Bastard breaks up and they start Judgment, which is 2 guys from Bastard and the drummer of Death Side, and then this guy Nori who sings on the first 2 7-inches, it's right in this lane and it picks up right where this stuff leaves off. And it's like, and then on the 3rd single, they get the singer of Bastard, and it's like, oh, we get a bonus Bastard record. Like, it's just so fucking good. Like, it's unbelievable. Zig Yaku, the guitar player of this stuff, he just knows what to play. You know what I mean? Like, there's just guys out there in any genre that just like, you know what to play. Like, the riffs write themselves. Like, they're kind of like just channeling the essence of the genre. And that guitar player of that band, Zig Yaku, he's just like, he also writes the lyrics and stuff like that. He's just like that guy. Like, he just lives in the stream of hardcore and like becomes the vessel in which it, you know, carries itself. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing. Fucking so good.
Dan, what were you going to say?
I was going to say I fully agree that the vocals are an extra just instrument of the texture of pummeling you, but the song Truth, when this is from an era where like lots of records would be closed out by possibly the best song. Nowadays, that I don't think people sequence their records that like that as much anymore. But this album closer, Truth, is just so fucking amazing. Where is that truth? Like, so good.
Hell yeah. I love it. Okay, let's jump into the Slang songs. And Jeremy, I'm going to need a little clarification on this band because when I Googled them, it says they started in the late 80s, but it doesn't look like they have any releases until the later 90s. Was that a typo on the late 80s thing, or what's the story with this band?
I think they have some 90s, some earlier stuff. I'm almost positive.
Okay. Ben, jump in the interwebs, and Jeremy, just tell us what you know.
Yeah, well, so they're a little bit different because they it's funny because when you see pictures of them, how they look versus how they sound, it's very different because they look very they got charged hair and they got like the spiked jackets and everything like that, but they have like a heavier New York hardcore element, especially on their more recent records. That they definitely have that like foundation. Excuse me, that foundation of like D-beat stuff. And, I think like their last maybe 3 or 4 records have been their best, like The Immortal Sin, Devastation in the Void, which is their most recent. And what's the one in between? Glory Outshines Doom. Like those records are like fucking great. Like, but they're a little different. And, I think that the way they structure their stuff to like a person who's into like heavier hardcore, it'd be a lot more palatable than some of these bands. Maybe the other bands are a little too fast for them or whatever. And that's why I kind of wanted to start the playlist off with Slang, because that song Scum, it's just like, it's so heavy, and like had the drummer done anything different, that riff probably would have sounded like a silly, like throwaway nu metal riff. But like instead, like it just like hits you and you're like, oh fuck, this, where's this going? Like, and it's just all power, and they're part of that whole Burning Spirits thing. They're on like the Burning Spirits DVDs and stuff like that. And yeah, they're just, they've been around a long time, but I don't know if they really caught their stride until like the mid 90s. I think their first record might be 95.
Yeah, this is super rad. I hadn't heard this before, and I didn't realize it was so modern. Like these songs you chose, I think are from the 2010s.
I think rules. It's from 2015.
2015.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's so ill. These songs rip. I'm so stoked you put them here. And there is a repress on Prank. So I think Prank, did they re-release they did like the Crow repress maybe?
Oh yeah, they do. They did way more than just one Crow repress. They pretty much Prank does the US releases for Crow, for Slang. They've done a bunch of the Slang records. They did some of the Forward stuff. He's just friends with a lot of those guys, a lot of those bands. So Ken, so he just, he's been to Japan many times. He's the guy who brought Gaze to the United States, playing the infamous Gilman show that everybody always talks about from 96. He's the guy. So, a lot of Japanese bands trust him and let them issue their records.
So rad. Dan, what did you think about this?
Yeah, I was pretty psyched on this. Also because I stupidly let my shop have my Spotify. So when I'm trying to listen to the playlist and it's during business hours and I'm not there, I have to start YouTubing everything, right? To listen to the songs, to enjoy them, to, get ready for talking about them. And when I did this, I saw that there was like a video for this, for Slang. And I watched it and they were just fucking, ripping. It's just very of the time of like alternative press style bands going into a room in black and white and playing. But they look awesome. And the song's so good. And then I listened to it, like the recorded version as well, to make sure that, it sounded great. And this band's really good. Like, really good. The drummer is incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ben, what's your take on this, and were you able to dig up anything?
I think it's like that song "Reason to Brutality" has that single note Slayer style guitar riff, and it's over fast hardcore drumming, so like the drumming keeps it grounded in hardcore. And it seems like, yeah, if you're like a kid who's into modern, more metallic style hardcore, American hardcore, this could be like your gateway into Japanese hardcore. Seems reasonable. Not my thing. It's good though. It's well recorded.
Also,
Dude.
in 1999, Slang does a split record with 25 to Life.
Yeah, and you know
Never-
what 25 to Life song was on that?
Let me look. Hold on one second.
Memories is my guess.
Yep, it was Let the Past Be the Past that had the line.
It was, yes. Yeah.
Memories. Yep. How's that for a tie-in? Your
Fuck.
boys got your back, dude. We're all about the stitch back on 185. What's up, motherfuckers? Yeah, dude.
And that was Slayer.
Okay.
Didn't I say that was Slayer sounding?
That's right. That's right. One note, dude.
There you
Okay.
go.
Jeremy, anything you feel like dirty for not having on here? Like, because we're giving someone like, here's a starter kit. How good do you feel about it, and how bad do you feel about it?
Well, a lot of the really, it's great that Bastard and Deathside are on Spotify. But it's a real shame that access to like Gauze and access to like Judgment, it's just not there. Like you have to go other places besides Spotify to hear it. And those are absolutely, top of the genre, and not Paintbox, the band that Chelsea did after Deathside broke up. They get real weird, but it works. Like they call themselves psychedelic hardcore. And I mean, they add like merengue stuff and jazz elements. And like, it almost sounds like a hardcore, like Grateful Dead at times. They add like mariachi horns. Like it's really interesting.
So
and
it's
I
like
know
area.
but it's like at the
Area
same
core?
time, they're like this incredibly ripping hardcore punk band that like just did something completely out of the box and completely different. And all their records are amazing. Like at first, when I first heard them, it was like, I'm the first record only. I like the first record only because that's the one that's like pure hardcore punk. And then, I got one of the 7-inches that kind of delves into a little bit of a different direction. I was like, yeah, no, this 7-inch is really good too. I don't like those other LPs. And then, 2 months later, I'm like, I celebrate the entire collection. It's a shame that Paintbox just isn't just out there. I mean, you can find like some of the records, like you can find like the first LP because it was pressed by a Canadian label and by Prank Records. And you can find the last LP, Trip, Trance, and Traveling, a lot because it came out like after Chelsea's death, and there's a lot of them pressed. So you can find those records around. But the one that like everyone seems to like is Earthball Sports Tournament. Thankfully, Prank is repressing it at the end of this. It's already, it's just delayed because of whatever's going on in pressing plants. But that record is so good. I would just say anybody check out the Paintball 7-inches, the Paintbox 7-inches, and the first, all the LPs. Fuck it, just check out the whole stuff. Even if you don't like it, you're going to hear something you do.
Yeah, from my personal perspective, the one band that I like a lot that's not on here is, I do like that band Crow. I love that.
Crow's amazing.
That
Fuck
second
yeah.
LP that got re-released, I think it got re-released by Prank. Let me double check. Yeah, got re-released by Prank in 2006 and 2010. It's called Bloody Tear.
Bloody Tear. That record smokes.
Yeah, so that's pretty easy to get. Everyone can check that out as well. If you want to branch out of this starter kit, it's a rager. And shout out to Guzman for hipping me to that. So, I think this is a great job, Jeremy. Closing thoughts here, Dan?
This is definitely a deep field to get into. There's some other Japanese bands that I had been tortured with by my old roommate in the past, Gas Dunk and Lip Cream. where he would just play those nonstop, and especially the Gastonk vocals would make me want to jump into traffic. So I would say I ignorantly wrote off a lot of the stuff, and I'm really excited to dig deeper. The Bastard LP as the starting point to the stuff that I really love, and then this playlist has offered up so much more. So, arigato.
Hell yeah. Ben, closing thoughts, and how stoked were you that 1.5 got mentioned?
I was pretty stoked because when we wrote that article last year, we were kind of at a crossroads on whether or not we should talk about bands from outside of North America, and I seriously considered the Stalin, but it was just too overwhelming to talk about the entire world and how punk evolved into hardcore in very similar ways all over the place. But the only other thing I want to add is Japanese hardcore bands tend to be, and I am generalizing here, theatrical, and there's a degree of showmanship to their live shows. If you go see, I toured Japan with Broken Needle in 2009, and we played with Gauze and many other bands, and I've seen many Japanese bands play in the United States, and they put on a show. I mean, I can't think of any exceptions to the rule, really. Like, they'll be just they really want to leave a lasting impression on you when you see these Japanese bands play. A high energy, jumping around, a lot of, sometimes even props are used, more so than your average American band. So I'm generalizing, but I believe that to be the case.
Jeremy, closing thoughts on the genre.
I'm not going to pretend that I've been into it forever, because I haven't. Like I said earlier, like I was turned off very early on, but the past few years when I've really gotten into it, I've fallen in love with and discovered so many awesome bands. And the Death Side LPs, the Paintbox LPs, and the Forward While You Alive EP, like those are those are the ones I constantly and consistently go back to, and then the Judgment singles. And I think that anybody who kind of explores into that stuff will really get into it, especially if they, appreciate Poison Idea and Discharge and, street cred metal, like a Diamond Head or a early Iron Maiden or something like that. Like, they could really, really get into this stuff. And, I just really love it. It's something that, I didn't think I would, because, I always thought even when I was a kid and into punk, I always thought people who looked punk were kind of silly. But I recognize that the Japanese bands are very serious about what they're doing. And they're so earnest about it that it makes me like it more.
Yeah, so rad. And it's just cool to love music for what it is. So, a lot of these subgenres, they do turn people away because there's a lot of better than you, elitist, record store, gatekeeping culture. And to those people, suck it.